Hello, and welcome to History Stories. I'm Dr. Megan Easley-Walsh, an author, a writing consultant, and a scholar. In this episode, we're looking at the book that made me a doctor. To be entirely honest, all of my books are special to me in a unique way. I think as an author, it might even be some kind of law. That being said, I've saved the last 2 episodes of Season 2 for 2 of my novels that have been especially impactful. Today, we're discussing one of those, Meridian. Last season, I spoke about how this was the novel that started me on the path to my doctorate of history. I'm not sure how many people start off on embarking on a path to a doctorate by writing a novel first, especially when the degree isn't in English or creative writing or something closely related to that. For me, it was entirely the subject matter. 1884 held more information than my fictionalized accounting of it could contain, and it demanded that I research more. Specifically, I was focused on the International Prime-Meridian Conference, and in Meridian, the novel, a host of characters are drawn to Washington, D.C. from around the world because of it. This season, we've been looking at locations in Ireland that have some connection to my stories. Since I wrote all of them while living in Ireland, this seemed to make sense. With Meridian, however, I'd like to tell you about the French town of Colmar, sometimes known as Little Venice, where cheerful, colorful buildings line the canals. Colmar is a town that I used to visit with my parents while living in Germany. Why am I bringing up Colmar? In Meridian, one of the characters is working on the Statue of Liberty, and Bartholdi, who designed the Statue of Liberty, came from Colmar. If you've ever read my books, it should come as no surprise that I'm bringing up France. Perhaps, most obvious of all, my first novel features France most prominently, Flight Before Dawn. Here's a behind-the-scenes fact. My novels were not written in the order in which they were published. In fact, Meridian was the 3rd novel that I wrote. With What Edward Heard sandwiched between Flight Before Dawn and Meridian, my first 3 novels all include France. In addition to my many trips to France while living in Germany, I do have French in my heritage, and Easley derives from French Huguenots who landed in Virginia in the 1600s. Speaking of What Edward Heard, here's a bonus fact. Chapters in What Edward Heard are inspired by my own family of French Huguenot silk merchants who traveled from France to Switzerland to England before arriving in Virginia. This story is one of movement. Meridian is also a mapping of characters and locations, a story of people on the move, shaping their times and intersecting with characters from around the world. To me, this is one of the joys of learning about history, observing connections between people and places. And for me personally, there's also joy in tracing my own heritage over the centuries and encountering pieces of it along my journey. I was amazed to discover that the small Irish town I live in, of approximately 10,000 people, was the birthplace of a medieval ancestor of mine. Imagine the odds! It's almost as if it were written by someone in a story. While I didn't consciously arrange that, I did write Meridian. Here's more about it. A reporter must anticipate the actions of a secret society, or her headlines will be death and destruction. In 1884, Elliot Story is on a mission to prove herself as she leaves behind San Francisco for the nation's capital. A newspaper reporter like her doesn't often get a chance to cover an international conference. Elliot is definitely not going to miss this chance to make her mark on the journalistic world. The world is precisely the target of a secret society pulsing through Washington, D.C. One by one, people find themselves drawn to Elliot in an attempt to unravel what's really going on. Journalism must turn to investigation. Kidnapping and theft seem like enough excitement. Then the city itself is threatened. Up against the clock, Elliot must navigate the interlocking paths of a suffragette, an architect working on the Statue of Liberty, and a diamond miner in Africa. At her side is a man haunted by his war hero father. Bitterness has broken him, but if he doesn't face his demons, he'll lose Elliot, the hidden truth about his father, and Washington will crumble. here's how it all begins. All the tea in China, 1879, the Pacific Ocean. The balance of time so easily slips from the scales when sailing on an endless sea. Days wane listlessly on until a tempestuous wind rips a sail or an uncharted current threatens to tow under the mightiest vessel. Then every second presses in with its imposing metronome, and all are summoned to action. Offered as reward for such a life is the refreshing gust of the wind, the brazen sun to beat upon one's back, and the tantalizing freedom of an expansive constant sea. When the nautical charms are exhausted, there is always the promise of a beckoning distant shore. Upon that shore rests a welcoming home which anchors one to the permanence of solid ground. Such an anchor is a welcome thought when the sea gesticulates wildly with its foam-capped arms of waves. Some are born of the sea, and are more at home on its steady rocking sway than upon terra firma, but some, though well accustomed to every admonished warning of the colors of the sky, thoroughly equipped with the knowledge of the sheepshank, the sheepbend, and the figure-8, and with their lips ever ready to whistle a sea shanty, do not belong to the churned-up depths and the salty spray. Nathaniel Henry Greason was such a person. Leaning against the rail of the deck, Nathaniel scanned the vast waters through the eye of his telescope. "It's not out there, sir." Nathaniel had become so enraptured in his surveying that he had failed to hear the other man approach. As he looked up now, Percival, ever ready to please and having accumulated scarcely half the years of life that Nathaniel had, filled his vision. "What's not out there?" "The land, sir. I know you're anxious to be in port. You had that look of it in your eye." He spoke the words confidently, and then, realizing that he had perhaps overstepped his boundary, cast his eyes down and added, "Sir." Percival's self-assurance disappeared, shriveled under the heat of the sun. Nathaniel, though, was not cross with the man before him, and even warily nodded his agreement. "It ought to be there," he said simply. "Sir, we've been searching the past 3 days. The maps have said land would be reached any moment, but still, it's not out there. It's like someone wiped it clean off the map, sir." Nathaniel studied Percival, and, sparked by his words, issued his order. "Percival, continue looking. The moment land is spotted, tell me." "Yes, sir," he said, snapping to attention, and training his eyes expectantly on the horizon. Nathaniel turned to walk away, but was stopped by Percival's question. "Sir, where will I find you?" "I will be with the maps," he said, looking especially serious. Spurred on by Nathaniel's look of concentration, Percival resumed his post. I've ended the reading on this line because, unbeknownst to me at the time of writing, Nathaniel's words became prophetic. As I spoke about in episode 3 of season 1, Meridian inspired further research which led to my PhD in history. Like Nathaniel, I too am with the maps. Wherever your journey takes you, may you be safe, healthy, and happy. Until next time, this has been History Stories.